color. I got the picture.
Hey guys, press any button and we are back with the action adventure series, season 2 as it were, and we're going to start off with some aesthetics. Going to be jumping straight into it and we're going to be going strong with this one. We are going to be texturing our character. I'm going to be doing that by hand, by unwrapping our character and texture painting them. Should be a fun part and should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to walk through this one with you guys, so buckle in because it's going to be a wonderful ride. The first thing you'll notice is everything looks the same, and that's exactly where you should be with me. If you've taken these project assets, then be in the layout here, just in the standard viewport, looking at your character, how majestic it is, and go to the end of the timeline of all the animations that we've done. And so you can see that I'm at 480 on the timeline. If you remember, you can edit where the timeline ends by doing this stuff. So I'm going to go to where it says end here. I'm going to hit 480 as it was before. And what are we doing with this? We're going to reset the pose of our character so that we can paint them properly. To do this, I'm going to click on the bones of my character, the armature if you remember. And we're going to go into pose mode and make sure that you've distanced this some frames away from your last frame, because you don't really want it to jank up your frames, but because we've done it isolated in Unity, we scooped up the specific frames that we needed from our animation timeline. You should be good to go, but just make sure you don't do this like in between one of your animations, because you're going to get an unpleasant surprise. So with our pose mode here for our bones, we're going to hit A, and that's going to select all of the bones. Doesn't select the mesh because it is just the bones we have selected. Isn't it a beautiful world when things work so easily like that? And then we're going to hit Alt R. Alt R resets our pose. We get that absolutely phenomenal T pose right there. I give it an 8 out of 10. Maybe a 7. His arms aren't all the way up, but it's a pretty solid T pose we've got going for ourselves. And you'll notice that it's created a keyframe, so if you want to look at the jank that we've just avoided, there you go. Yeah, we don't have to deal with any of that because we spaced out our keyframes nicely. Alright, now what we're going to do, let's split up our workspace. So at the edge of the viewport, you'll have this little double arrow thingy, and what that tells you is you can move around your viewport a little bit. I'm going to right click as that's there, and we're going to split the area, and we're going to go to about layout. Depends what screen you're working with. I'm working with a bigger monitor this time as opposed to my other monitor, so if I were working there it'd be a bit different. But now we've got 2 versions of our character. How is this useful to us? Why would we have 2 of the same thing? Well, it's not useful, so we're going to change it. You're going to go over to this drop down here where it says editor type, and we're going to hit image editor. Bam. We got this nice little grid. What are we going to do with that grid? You guys ever painted Warhammer? Anything like that? Well, we're going to paint our character just like that in 3D. So everything we're going to do is going to be presented nice and flat over here as we work on it either here or here. So that's going to be the beauty that you'll see in a little bit. Now we're going to go over to object mode and we're going to select our mesh because we're not painting the bones, we are painting our character. And once you've selected the mesh, you'll go over to this material tab down here and we're going to create a new material. Isn't that so easy? And this material has no properties right now and it doesn't really know what we want to do with it. We're going to tell it what we're going to do. So I am going to go to this base color tab over here. So they spelt color wrong, and we're going to ignore that and click on this, and then we'll go to image texture. Now this gives us the option to work with images for our character here. We're going to create a new image. So we'll go over to this workspace that we've just created, and I'm going to hit new here. And I'm going to call this image cats, the pixel width and height. If you increase the pixel width and height, your image will be sharper and more refined. If you decrease it, it's going to be more pixelated. I'm going to leave it at default just because of the simple nature of what we'll be doing, but you get some nice smooth edges if you just double this PX right here. So if you're going to be using this for any of your personal projects, make sure you get that PX at a decent level. And colors black, we'll mess around with that. And then we're going to hit OK, and all we see is darkness and a little bit of gray. Well, what can we do with this darkness and a little bit of gray? First things first, we can save it. So we're going to hit save as you saw me do there. If it was too quick, I'll do it again. So we go to image here, and then you hit save as, and then you'll have your folder here. Now, if you've been following the project, as I said, your stuff should be in the correct files. We're going to just save as the image. That's going to be in our Unity assets for this particular project. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to a viewport, a shading. So that's going to be next to all of your viewing options here. So we can toggle through that. But we're going to go over to viewport shading on our default thing. And we're going to go to flat for our shading, and now our character has no volume to them, and that's exactly what we want, because we don't want the light to really obscure what we're doing. Still, we haven't applied this texture to our character. Press any button, you may be asking yourself at home, and do not worry, we'll do that right now. So under image texture, in the materials section that you have here, you're going to open the texture that you want, and mine is called cats.png, and we're going to use that texture as the base color for our character here. And we can see something has gone completely awry, and how we're going to remedy that. So we are going to go out of the object mode, having our mesh still selected, and we're going to go into edit mode, and now we have this very nice white clean matrixy looking cat in our edit mode. Going to hit that A button, and A is going to allow us to select everything, and we're going to hit U. Then we're going to go to Smart UV Unwrap, and we're going to click that. And what that's done is it's allowed us to get that flat image of our character that we will be able to paint on. Now we go back into object mode, and from object mode we're going to go into texture paint, and there we can see our projection of our character. And if we paint on them like this, we can actually see things happening on this left side and in front of us right here. What a magical thing. How are we going to use these tools? Well, obviously I've just shown you the draw tool, and we've got a paint bucket tool here. These are going to be the two main tools that we'll be using, as well as a paint mask. We're going to get into the brush first, so we have a good idea of how that works. I've got the draw tool here, and we're going to go to the tool tab. You'll by default be on the item tab, but you want to go to the tool tab, and we are just going to change the color of our brush. And for fun, I'm going to first go over to where it says view, and then change this to paint, and I'm going to paint my character from here. And we can see that different parts of my character are associated to different parts of this map right here. Then we're going to go into the blend mode. I like to use add as my blend mode. That's just the way I was taught. And then we'll adjust the strength to 100, because what it's doing right now is it's taking my sensitivity and it is saying if I press lightly, then I have low opacity, and if I press hard, then I have full opacity. I'm going to actually get rid of that functionality, and I should say I'm using a tablet, and that's the only reason why it's able to track my sensitivity. If you're using a mouse, please don't break your mouse by pressing hard on it. We'll go over to radius here, and we'll actually adjust that by pen sensitivity. So I like to have my radius kind of work like that, just because it's a personal preference, but you can have these deselected. You won't have them affect you if you're using a mouse, as I said earlier. Then we'll go to the paint bucket tool. What does that do? Well, if we click, then we find out it just paints everything, and it does so in a way that doesn't really interfere with the other stuff that we have. If I set this to add, not something I've done before, but it's a little bit more intense this time, and that's actually looking really gross, like all of it. So how do we undo our mistakes? I'm going to go over to this brush again. I'm going to increase the radius to about 100 px, so 100 pixels. And I'm just going to erase all of my mistakes, just like this, just like this. Something we could probably do with the paint bucket tool, but I don't imagine you'll be erasing everything as we're doing it here, but eventually we can subtract out everything and bring it back to its original dark state. Fantastic, brilliant, wonderful. You pretty much have the tools to do all of this yourself, but one other thing I'm going to add to your tool set is the ability to section off different areas. Now, if you've watched a well-cultured show like Pimp My Ride, then you'll know that when they start pimping someone's ride, as it were, they'll cover the parts of the whip that they don't want to paint. And that is exactly what we're going to get Blender to help us to do here. So Blender provides a way that we can do this with the paint mask. So we've got these nice little Tron highlights. I will reassure you they do nothing right now. So we're going to go into the edit mode and we're going to select this face icon, and this is going to help us select some bits that we want to actually paint. And I'm going to paint my character's robe. So I've selected one bit of their robe, and then the next bit, and then the next bit, and then the next bit. And then I say, screw it, this is taking too long. So we're going to hit Control L, and that's going to select the entire thing. And then we'll go back into texture paint and pick a color, any color. We're going to use add, and I'm going to go for a nice vermilion-esque color. So now I've got a color. Let's see what this actually does. Well, we got a clue because some of our character just is not really showing up in terms of the texture paint that we have here, which is complete darkness. So what is happening? Oh my goodness, we can color in our character without coloring any parts that we don't want to color. And in fact, if I were smarter, I could use a special tool, the paint bucket tool, if I were to actually use the right color. And to get the right color, I'm going to undo this hideous mistake that we've done and go to these two color blocks on our color picker. I'm going to take the eyedropper tool and do that. Now we can paint in our whole character. It's not going to look completely consistent because we've used different strengths for our stuff, but I can get it pretty close, and then I would adjust. Or you could just erase everything and start again with the paint bucket tool. But now I'm going to speed through the rest of the process and let you guys watch that in a time lapse, after which I will return and conclude. And there we have it, my cat character with a little bit more color to them. To view it, I've just gone into Look Dev. If you hold Z, you'll get an option wheel to where you want to view your character. And so I've gone for Look Dev, and that's given me a pretty decent representation of what they're going to look like in our Unity project. Obviously, could refine this a lot more, could make it a little bit more flashier, add some accents to it. But we got to continue on to doing something very important. And now that you're at this point, we are so close to being there. The last thing is to apply these textures in our actual game. So the first thing you are going to do is you are going to save this image texture that is your texture. And the reason why you're going to do that is because Blender will not do that for you. We're all too old to have Blender cleaning our room and saving our files for us. We're going to have to learn to do it ourselves. Then you're going to go over to File and Save your project. And while you're waiting for things to bake in Unity, because you should have your Unity project open at the same time, let's just look at some of these animations with a bit of color. My guy's got a little bit of sauce now. Okay, we will then turn to our project in Unity, and we can see our character dimly lit, but definitely with all of the drip on him. And if we play our game, then we will be able to see that. So here's our character. He's got his textures on him. Now remember, we messed around with low opacity stuff, and we can see what the result of that is. So you might want to heighten up the opacity of your character if the saturation is not where you want it to be. But that has been another press any button tutorial. Hope you guys liked that. It's probably a longer one. I'm looking at the recording time and it's a bit wamped, but either way, we're gonna keep going with this and we're gonna get it done. Guys, comment, like, subscribe, stick around for more tutorials, press on and keep creating.